Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the One People Show this week. And I let that song play because so many of you seem to be enjoying it. And it's a great song. I had visions of all of you sitting in front of your computers bopping away, so that was great. And it's by the Black Eyed Peas, for those who wanted to know. And today we have, I guess, lots of little tidbits of information for you, which I'm sure we will expand upon and have conversations about. But before we get to that, let's welcome Chris Hales.
Good morning, everybody. Great to be here. I hope it's good weather and pleasant wherever you are on the planet. Good to be here.
Well, I can say it's not here, so there you go.
Again.
Again. And welcome to Bobby Wright.
Hello, Lisa. Hello, Chris. Everyone in the chat room, everyone's tuned in. Welcome to the show. Glad to be here.
Lovely. And I believe we have Scott Bartle as well.
Good morning. Hello.
You're
Hi,
making
everyone.
this a regular event, aren't you?
Seems to be.
Seems to be. Nice to have you.
Thank you.
And were you able to get Brian on the line, Bob?
I did include him, but let me try to ring him again.
Okay.
He's on the road going to some kind of giggle fest, is he? Lisa?
He's on the road. He is on the road. He's travelling back to San Diego, actually. He's in the car, so we may or may not be able to talk to him.
Yeah,
okay.
we had a great time with Judy and Brian on the Enjoy show last week. Scott and I really enjoyed that. That was fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed that too. That was good fun.
I also wanted to say, before I forget, because I'm likely to do that, I wanted to say thank you to Angel, Bobby, Anita and her husband, and Sherry, who came down on Wednesday, traveled I don't even know how many miles, and they spent the night here.
Is this Angel Lucci for part of his tour?
Yes. And we had a great time. Just kind of relaxed. It was just like having old friends over for the night.
Well, like you said, you can make new old friends.
That's true. You can.
You can. And I'm sure we'll probably get an update from Randy. I'm sure he'll call in, because I know that there was a group of people who actually were so blown away by his story last week, they got on the road and went to visit. So hopefully Randy will call in with an update on that too. Okay, where do we start? Scott, you might want to kick this off. You've done some research recently for here in Australia in regards to the Banking Act and the Corporations Act and what they have to say about promissory notes.
Yes. Yeah, we were doing a little bit of research in preparation for turning up into a bank and actually asking them a few questions about the aspect of depositing promissory notes. And the first nugget of information I came across was in the the Corporations Act, which is applicable to all of the banks here in Australia. And to verify that, we went and had a quick poke around in ANZ Bank, Australia and New Zealand Bank's annual report, and in the 3-page director's report, we found, in accordance with the Corporations Act of 2001, 10 times. So we ticked that box. Now, granted, this act is just another one of their corporate acts. It does serve the purpose of a piece of information that you can deposit under the nose of a banker. And the best part we came about was a section that says providing finance means. And there were 3 different circumstances that satisfied the requirement of providing finance.
Now, Scott, what you're about to read out was in the Corporations Act itself.
Yes, exactly. Yes. It wasn't in any bank publication. It was the act that supposedly governs those banks.
So first you established that all the banks operate by the guidelines of the Corporations Act. And
yes.
And so what we're sort of trying to provide here for you is some information where you can go and do the equivalent in your own jurisdiction, so to speak, in your own country.
And these would be the things to look for.
Yeah, the objective here is we're creating the sequence of a conversation and providing evidence after every sort of major statement. And we'll tie this together at the end when Scott's talked a bit about the things we found in these acts. So keep going with the Corporations Act, Scott, and what's in it.
Cool. Thanks for the context there. I get so close to it, so I miss that sometimes when sharing it.
Yes, we have to curb your enthusiasm too.
Okay, so most of us have had the belief that banks lend money. Now we've been shooting that one down recently with all the publications that were found from the Federal Reserve banks and the IMF and Bank of England, the whole lot. Now we found these little 3 points that relate to providing finance. And first one is lending money. So, okay, tick, we're happy we understand that one. The third one is probably the most interesting. The second one is a bit dull, but I'll jump straight to the third one. Drawing, accepting, endorsing, negotiating, or discounting a bill of exchange, check, payment order, or promissory note so that someone can obtain funds. So
now, what it doesn't say, which I love, is so that someone can receive a loan. It says so that someone can obtain funds.
Notice how many...
Go on.
Carry on, Lisa.
Well, I was going to say the discounting. Drawing, accepting, endorsing, negotiating, or discounting. Now, as far as I know, the discounting part means what Heather explained, which was you go in there and say, I want to deposit $1 million, and they get 100,000 of that. That's the discounting process, right?
I see it as the same way. And I was discussing that with Chris, I think either last night or the night before, and we came to the same conclusion that discounting was exactly that. And,
You notice there's an interesting thing here. So this is the Corporations Act. It's not the Banking Act. Any corporation can do this if they're actually incorporated under the Corporations Act, which means your utilities, okay, which are a corporation, can take your signature, which will be on file from your original application when you sign up with them, and they'll keep reusing it every time you actually do anything with them. They'll go away and treat it as a promissory note, or could, and that's there's been references to the way the utilities double dip. They actually get into your account in some way, your SEST-UKV account. The other thing they may be doing is in fact using this technique, treating it as a promissory note.
Well,
I just thought I'd throw that in because it is the Corporations Act and not the Banking Act. It's for all corporations.
And notice as well on some of the documentation that's floating around on some banks is we're talking about credit facilities. They even use that term, credit facility, rather than a loan in some instances. Now, doesn't alter the fact that if they did deposit, draw, accept, endorse, negotiate a discount on a bill of exchange, check, payment order, or promissory note, stole it, and then gave it back to you with the intent that you repay them, then whatever they call it doesn't matter. It's just interesting to observe some of their own wording. So that was the first one, the providing finance. So definitely encourage folk to have a look in, I'd say, the equivalent of the Corporations Act in their country, and see if they can find that. The way I did it was just open up all of the PDF documents and search for the term promissory note, and it popped up on a few pages and just went straight to that. So the other one was in the current, the Banking Act. Let me pull that one up. And that actually just had a definition of Australian currency. It just said Australian currency includes notes, coins, postal notes, money orders, bills of exchange, promissory notes, drafts, letters of credit, blah, blah, blah. So, it looks like promissory notes tick the box as currency as well.
Now, I know that we're focusing on promissory notes, and just so you know, promissory note is exactly what you sign when you get a mortgage or you buy a car or anything like that. That's what a promissory note is. But what we're working on, I believe, is more of a letter of credit, is it?
Yeah, I think there's a number of those definitions sitting in there. Bills of exchange as well.
It's either a bill of exchange or a letter of credit.
What's the difference?
Well, we're not. It's not a liability. We're not promising. We're not giving an IOU. We're actually depositing value.
Yeah.
So we're actually giving. We're the document is a representation of that value. So it in itself is a letter of credit, which is also included in the same definition. So it doesn't really change the scenario at all. But I believe what Heather is working on is more of a letter of credit, or am I wrong?
I don't understand the terms enough to even be qualified to comment.
I think you've got a good point there, Bob. There's you do run the risk with discussing promissory notes is bringing up that aspect of I promise to pay, whereas we're talking letters of credit or bills of exchange. It is slightly different in terminology, yet potentially massively different in actual effect. So another good one to poke around in is the Bills of Exchange Act here in Australia. That's actually got some of the definitions for some of those items.
Yeah, we were looking at that that before the show, and in the Bills of Exchange Act, it actually classifies Australian currency. It actually defines what Australian currency is, and it says Australian currency.
Banking Act, that one, Chris.
Is that the Banking Act? Okay.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, just read that one.
The bills. Yeah, what's in the Bills of Exchange Act?
There's some more definitions on promissory notes, and also discussing things like endorsement on notes, and what it takes to be a complete note. So if it's not complete, it's regarded as inchoate. But yeah, that deserves a whole heap more study, and suggests that some of the listeners around the world might be able to narrow down their search and poke around in some of those sort of acts, like the corporation sort of guidelines, the Banking Act. Have a look around for things like promissory notes, letters of credit, bills of exchange, and what I'd like to do when I go visit the bank is just have a little checklist of things that I can bring up, like you mentioned, Chris. And so when any objection is encountered, like, oh, we don't do that, we only loan money, you can turn around to the Corporations Act and says, well, it says here there's 3 ways of providing finance. Are you saying that you only lend money? In that case, you'd be able to provide the prior rights, title and ownership to the money that you loan, so that I'm not borrowing laundered money, for example. So, there's plenty of things that we can do to build up a little bit of substantiation to the I suppose conversation when we go and talk to a banker.
Well, we do have people who are going and having those conversations already, and one of them is Chase Binney, who a lot of the people listening will be familiar with. And we've got a little note from him saying, I spoke to a man from an independent Community Bankers of America, an organisation of nearly 7,000 community banks. Let's call him Mr. Dove. I love that. We talked about depositing promissory notes as cash. First, I noticed he kept referring to it as a loan. I said it's not a loan, it's a positive deposit of value, and your bank would receive a service fee. Mr. Dove said banks want to see collateral for promissory notes because they take a risk in trusting the borrower to pay it back. I reassured him this is not a loan and it is 100% guaranteed profit in the service fee. He said that if they deposit the promissory note as cash with no collateral backing it, it would be seen as an unsecured loan. According to Mr. Dove, the bank regulators or auditors periodically come into the bank and review the stack of promissory notes and contracts. So they actually have stacks of promissory notes to audit and contracts to make sure they are meeting Federal Reserve requirements, perhaps to make sure that they are all loans and not deposits of value. From this conversation, I get the impression that any bank has the ability and self-authority to deposit promissory notes as cash, but they think they have to abide by the federal banking regulators, who are all foreclosed by OPPT. Mr. Dove told me that if they deposited my promissory note, they would probably be shut down by the regulators. So he pretty much said the bank can do this, but some people with guns might show up and say, hey, stop it, please. Are banks really this close to opening the gates of abundance? Is this the only barrier, the belief in punishment, the fear of the federal authorities? Well, that's foreclosed. The door is wide open. So that's a note from Chase.
Yeah. Now, I'd just like to read this bit out of. I'll keep reading this bit out of the. I think it was the Banking Act, because it defines currency. And one of the things we want out of this conversation is for people listening to it to start investigating their own versions of this in their own, corporate constitutions. This particular definition is quite revealing. It says Australian currency includes notes, coins, postal notes, money orders, bills of exchange, promissory notes, drafts, letters of credit, traveller's cheques, payable or expressed in Australian money, and also includes rights and instruments of title to Australian money. And they define foreign currency in exactly the same fashion. Okay, and the idea is that in an ongoing conversation with the banks, you can show them a sequence of documentation. You can show them, they work under the Corporations Act. The Corporations Act defines promissory notes, bills of exchange, etc. Those items are defined as Australian currency. And, it's clear that they've actually been using promissory notes. Let's call them what we're probably heading for might be closer to a letter of credit. As Bob pointed out, but
now I'm looking in the UCC as we're speaking right now, and it defines a letter of credit. It means an engagement by a bank or other person made at the request of a customer, and of a kind within the scope of this article, that the issuer will honor drafts or other demands for payment upon compliance with the conditions specified in the letter of credit. It also says a documentary draft. A documentary draft or a documentary demand for payment is one honor of which is conditioned upon the presentation of a document or documents, and documents meaning any paper, including a document of title, security, invoice, certificate, notice of default, and the like.
Okay, well, we'll have to wait and see exactly what approach Heather took, because it will be somewhere in one of these definitions, but it's clear that the Corporations Acts and the Banking Acts and the acts that deal with currency, certainly in our country, and it's a template that they've applied across the planet, so it'll appear in similar legislation in each country, that as we're having these conversations with bankers, we can show them that we know that in their system, everything is in place for them to deal with these kinds of transactions. Okay, so that they can't sit across the table and assume we're ignorant and just say no, we're not doing it. That's where this investigation's leading. This is to create a support pack for people to go and have this conversation. And depending on the response of the bank, or if they're not denying everything, you might even need to use some of this stuff. But if they start trying to say, oh, no, we don't do that, no, we don't do that, you can lay the stuff out on the table in front of them and say, actually, you do. So, let's not be silly, let's continue the conversation. Because they're going to use every possible means they have of deflecting the request that we're going to make, or the offer, in fact, that we're going to make to them. And we want to draw them as much as possible down this path to the point where they really have to acquiesce that, yes, they could do it. And then the question can be, well, why don't you? You're sitting in front of me, I have the documentation, what's stopping you? And if it comes down to, oh, there's guys going to come around with guns, and, the next comment to them is, well, you have a decision to make, whether you're going to act in honour or whether you're actually not. And that's ultimately the pressure that we apply to them. Do you want to actually be a part of this, or do you not? Because this is what's coming. So it's a way of actually deflecting all throughout the conversation any denials that they just don't do this kind of thing. We know they do, and here it is from their own legislation in their own terms. So
I just need to make an announcement firstly. For those who have been asking where the hell this chat room is that we keep referring to, it's at the Blog Talk website where the player is. If you actually go to Blog Talk to listen to the show, it's further down. You just need to scroll down the page and you'll find the chat room under there. And it's there from anywhere from sort of 5 to 15 minutes before we go live and goes off when the show ends. So it's only there while we're live. It's not a separate Skype room or anything like that. That's first. And second is for the host, a reminder for all of us, whenever we give a link to a website, to please, we have to speak it as well as put it in the chat room, because there's a lot of people who are listening in on phones and what have you, or in the archive, and they miss them. So just a reminder for us.
Sure.
But
yeah.
Also on the subject that you were talking about, another example of a conversation that's been had with banks, you can find it on Removing the Shackles. It's called Something is Moving in Italy. And I think the more conversations like this that you come across, just to help you build up your own confidence in what can be said, what kind of responses you can get, the better. There you go. That's all I want to say.
Okay. Yeah, ultimately, when the documentation is published by Heather, we'll know the actual technique that she's used, because it will align with one or other of these types of documentation that the banks are constructed, set up to actually accept, and will align the pack of information with it at that point in time. So what we're doing here is some basic research, and what we were going to ask you guys in the audience to do is to look at your own local legislation, whether you're in Italy or the United States or Canada or England, wherever you're listening to this from. Start having a look at your acts. It's pretty easy to find. If you just do searches on promissory notes, searches on currency inside the relevant acts that you can find, they'll pop up pretty quickly, and you'll be able to start assembling, the makings of your own pack for your own country. Now, also need to note that what we're doing is preparing, if you like, the first wave. Once we find banks who are prepared to actually become our partners, then it will be that'll be completely routine. The individuals won't have to go through this whole process. But as we're the way showers and we're doing this repurposing work with the banks, we've got to do our homework in order to make this happen. So this is an extension of what Helen Vita was doing last week, which she actually was in fact going to start another process where the idea behind it is quite good, actually. The strategy is good. Going to send a communication to the CEO saying, I'm going to have an interview with bank manager X in 2 or 3 days' time. Here's what I want to do. Could you please notify that bank manager that, brief him however he needs to be briefed so he can deal with this conversation. Send a copy of that to the actual bank manager so that they know the CEO has been communicated with. And the objective here is to actually force the CEO to deal with this by communicating with the bank manager and vice versa. So it's kind of creating a link between the top of the system and the bottom. And if anyone else out there has strategies similar to that they think are worth trying, we can put them forward as well. That's just our working idea at the moment. There was a draft letter that BZ posted a day or two ago, which is part of the work. We didn't actually mean for it to be posted. It was simply an idea that we were passing around. But if you have got it, it's essentially along the lines that we think will work. That particular draft addresses too many issues. It covers securitization, or it covers other issues, not just the promissory note. And we're talking about this yesterday. We're going to simplify that, so just dealing with the one issue of this particular document. I think we need to probably stop calling it a promissory note just at the moment, because it's clear that it may not be that. So this is all a work in progress, folks. So I know there's a lot of very good thinkers out there, and if you've got your own strategies about how to actually address the banking system once we've assembled these documentary packs, the best procedure to go about it, start putting your ideas out there, and we'll we'll come up with the best possible strategy and start to implement it using teams of people in each city where we've got enough folks to actually do this. So we can literally work our way through the local banking systems in our own areas in a specific fashion. And as we do that, we can actually pass information amongst ourselves as to what's working and what's not. And essentially treat it like a proper campaign.
In regards to the documents themselves, there's sort of two little pieces of information there. One is kind of disturbing, and it's that some information came to light on Sunday, I believe it was, for Heather, that absolutely is the final piece of the puzzle. And it came through American Kabuki, actually. And it's in relationship to what was posted on Dee's blog, again, Removing the Shackles, a little update from Heather, or a little message from Heather. Some of you have seen that already. I did share it on Facebook. And what it says is, I see that every embodiment knowing, look up that definition and compare to the definition of know, is jockeying for position in the perceived universal value system. Just imagine the purported financial system operating in the universe, revaluing universal currencies based on their definition of universe. Sound similar? Or sound familiar? So this is a taste of what is being released for those perceived knowing embodiments. Now, if you did go and have a look at the words know and knowing, you'd see that the definition, this was a surprise to me because it's not what they taught me in school, that the definition for know is to have knowledge of something. Fair enough. But the definition of knowing was to either have or suggest that you have knowledge of a secret nature. You know something that others don't. Now, what essentially came to light, and the bit that's a bit disturbing, seems to be, and I know this is going to sound outrageous, but that humans are in fact a commodity that are essentially sold on a universal stock exchange. And there's a lot of different rabbit holes that we could go down for that. There's a lot of information that's come out over the last probably 20 years, really, about the Anunnaki and the gold going off planet and what may or may not be in that gold and what it's all for, and DNA being traded. Some of the conversations around greys and abductions and what they're doing with our DNA there. And I know how this sounds, but there's serious evidence for this going on out there. It has been for a long time. This would be part of, what Heather refers to as the divines and the divine plan. What it looks like is the RV, the prosperity packages, and everything that goes along with it, is in fact a repackaging of the commodities that are sold from this planet, not just this planet, apparently, to meet a more universal standard. Does anyone want to add to that at this point? Because I know it sounds how it sounds.
Yeah, look, one of the conversations we had before the show was how far to push down these particular rabbit holes with this particular audience. Now, certainly a lot of people in this audience would have done a fair bit of research, spent a bit of time listening to information about, let's just call them the new guys, we could call them the ETs, the races out there. Some of you probably haven't looked into that much at all, and we don't. That's why Lisa doesn't particularly want to push too far down this line here. But I have spent a long time investigating information in that area, and I have absolutely no doubt that there are many races out there, and a number of them are actually in our vicinity at the moment. assisting how they can in this process as we move through this transition that we're going through, because it's been known for a long time that this was coming. And what's emerging from the information Lisa's speaking of is the fact that although it's been hidden from us as part of the massive deception that's been in place for hundreds, if not thousands of years, there's always been an ongoing, if you like, trade between this planet and races not on this planet in stuff that is found to be valuable by them. And apparently one of those things is our DNA. So as information comes to light, we'll reveal it, but the information that Lisa just passed on actually matches with other information that I have that this trade has been actively going on. If you've not researched this, that's going to sound extremely out there, but please be open-minded, because the information that's pouring in about the realities of our reality, of this world, and its relationship to other worlds is really screaming out of the ether at the moment, and it's something that we really need to, if you haven't looked into it, just start listening to some of the Julian Wells material. Start at the beginning of the year. The archive is on the IUV Exchange. Start in January. Keep listening and go on that journey a touch.
Well, how this all relates back to what Heather's doing and the documents she's working on is it really was, from what I understand, the final piece in perfecting these documents. Now, I think I said it last week that she's been focused on, the documents are finished as far as I know. That what she's been focused on over the last 4 to 5 days is a refinement process of perfecting the wording with, it's why we've got in change instead of exchange. All the prefixes, all of the stuff that's especially in the English language and the way that they've used that in banking and law, everything has more than one meaning.
Again, very deceptive.
Very deceptive. The language, the version of the English language that is used in courts and in banking is not the version we learn at school. It's just not. And so making sure that she's got every word just so, and then also, as of Sunday, incorporating that information so that some of you may recall, and I can't actually recall who it was, but there was an IUV brought out by one of the corporations. Remember, it was registered.
Yes, they actually patented the concept of the IUV exchange. It was a patent that one of them
That's right.
And I think it was one of the credit card companies that did it.
It was one of the credit card companies, that's right. And it looked like it had been backdated, actually, when you looked at the paperwork. So they're trying to preempt everything she's doing and possibly hijack it. So this is why she's being as careful as she is, and why no piece of these documents, no information about what they contain will be released until they're online and available to us all. They're not getting a heads up. So they will go directly from Heather's computer online, probably to Dee's website first, removing the shackles, and then we will all go there and duplicate it and download it and spread the word. What else was I going to say about that? And Heather will be the first one to try it out, basically. And she'll do that probably in Morocco, but who knows? That's speculation on my part. Possibly before they even go online, so that we're not the ones having to deal with any bugs.
That would be extremely, extremely useful. I also wanted to on the language issue, point out an interesting aspect of the original UCC filings, which it becomes forgotten in these conversations because it's been a very long 6 months, and we've learned a great deal. Now, when we first looked at those documents, the language, particularly in things like the CVAC definition, talks about all manifestations of the Creator. Now, because of our limited thinking, because we tend to look at ourselves as simply being, working as an isolated entity, when you use the term manifestations of the Creator, you think of all manifestations of the Creator. That's just us. It's the humans on this planet that she's actually addressing. Actually, no, it's not. It really means all manifestations of the Creator. That's us and whatever other races are out there in the universe. So what we need to take into account when we're looking at what Heather's producing now is that the original UCC filings themselves were universal. They weren't just for here, and this is why this aspect that's just come out that Lisa mentioned matches really the process that Heather was actually taking us through from the beginning. It's not just something that's popping up now. It's actually always been there.
And it's important that one fact that you note that Heather, a lot of people have asked the question of why is it taking so long, and we keep getting dates and the dates pass, and because Heather doesn't do anything until she tests it herself. She did that with the investigation, letting her own house going to foreclosure. She tested every remedy I believe the straw man movement has out there, and the sovereignty movement. She tested them all herself. And until she gets the results that she's satisfied with, she doesn't let anything go out. And that's one of the things that I think people need to understand. This is the process that she goes through when she does her doing.
Well, actually, you can even equate that to the information that we've been able to share on these radio shows. When it's been very, very sensitive, she insists on coming on and saying it herself. She won't pass the message on for someone else to share on radio because she says, whoever says it, if they want to come after someone, then they can come after me. So she really does put herself in the firing line, first and foremost.
Yeah, she does.
So it's just a matter of, we have to be patient, and when we get them, we'll know they're right.
Yeah, it's a case of where, we can either have it now or have it right, and I'd rather have it right. I'd rather have it perfect. It'll make our job 100% easier.
Yes.
Particularly if she herself goes to a bank and everything takes place as we expect it to, that sets the template for us, and that will make it it will make it far easier. I mean, I'm sure the local banks are going to play dumb. They're going to play dumb for as long as we allow them to. But at some point in each country, there will be a bank who will be prepared to actually take that plunge and be our new partner, and then we're off.
Now, what I get, and some of you may remember, I don't know when this happened, January or February, when I had what I call my beast vision. And so for me, because I've had that personal experience, the energetic side of things makes so much sense to me. And also the fact that this is throughout dimensions, throughout creation, throughout you, throughout it all. There is nothing in isolation. Everything is affected. And the idea that we are a commodity on a universal kind of stock exchange, yeah, I get that. But what I also saw when I had that vision was how it's all collapsing, all of it. And everything that's being done from the very beginning with the documents that were filed has been the process of that collapse. Oh, everyone went quiet. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's we're actually right on the last, if you like, the last days before the shift really starts to kick in. And obviously you can't point to an exact moment. I mean, there's a very big energetic alignment at the end of the month. A lot of the light workers are feeling it. There's differences of opinion on what it means or what it potentially could do for us. And we'll just have to maintain our intention on the world that we want to build. That's one of the most important things we can do throughout this entire process. We have to have that knowing that this is the way it's going to happen.
Mhm. And man, energetically, we know we're all feeling what's going on at the moment. I don't look anywhere without somebody, whether it's online on Facebook or whether it's a friend in person, emails and messages I receive. Everyone seems to be going through something and can feel something coming. And this grand alignment that's happening on the 29th seems to be enormous. Taking it day by day over the next 2 weeks because it's just non-stop.
Yeah, look, the one of the interesting terms. Did you discuss the actual term that was revealed in the last couple of days?
Which term?
The ETF term.
Oh, yeah, that was the information.
The exchange traded
funds. Yeah,
we are an exchange traded
fund. Now, if you think about that for a minute, we are a fund. Now, Heather's always said that we are our own bank. To me, that term is just a different word, and it's confirmatory that if all that's happening at galactic level, that we are our own fund. So we are our own bank. We are our own supplier of value. Very interesting terminology there. Mm-hmm. Aligns with everything else that's been coming out at this point in time. So as far as the status of now, we're still preparing and working on supporting material, and we hope each person in the different countries around the place will. I know people will be chatting to the banks like Chase is doing, and if anyone has any stories about responses they're getting from banks, please feed them back to us because it's very, very informative as to the sorts of thought processes, arguments, issues going on at their end, and we need to understand their position as much as possible. It'll be a bit different in every place. So again, if you feed that back through to Dee or to Lisa or to Bob or Brian, anyone who runs a blog, so we can put it out there, it's great information to share.
Thank you. Okay, we actually have a couple of callers. Do you want to take them, or is there something else you wanted to cover off before we do that?
No, I think it's time to talk to the folks, for sure.
Talk to the folks. Okay, we have area code 575.
That's here, New Mexico. Yeah.
Hello. What was your name? Hello, New Mexico. Hello, 575? Oh, we heard you for a second.
We heard you for a second. You were just real quiet. If you can move closer to your microphone or your phone.
I don't think she realizes she's on air, so we'll mute that one. We have area code 732.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, this is New Jersey. This is Mark.
Hey, Mark from New Jersey.
How you doing? And got my friend Flo on the phone. Of course, you all know Flo.
Oh, yes, Flo. Hey, Flo.
I think he's muted himself. There he is. Hello, everyone.
Hey, Flo.
Hey, Flo.
Peace and love. Let my buddy
How are you, Mark?
Good information tonight. A lot more information to digest. Something that I have been wanting. I've been in want of that for a long time. Just some updates. But I wanted to mention this because I think it's rather important and paramount. What we're dealing with, and I think we all understand this and we're on the same page, we know we're dealing with entities that have been dealing in fictions for years, with their so-called money system, their currency system, which is actually operating in, has always, well, not always, but for the last, I think, 100 years or more, it operated in debt. And what I was going to say is maybe what might want to be considered here is a bank that actually does not operate in debt, that actually operates in specie, and that is not a part of that Federal Reserve Charter, but actually has their own charter and does business their way. And I'm just thinking that this particular institution might be more apt to dealing with us on these levels that are being brought out here on the call. Now, that's the Lakota Bank in North Dakota. Anybody can create an account. I actually do have an account there. And anybody from anywhere on the planet can do business with them. But as I said before, they deal in specie. Now, the specie, as we know it, we can't go to the corner store with a piece of gold or to a car dealership or to, one of these foreclosed corporations and say, hey, here, I want to give you this for that, because they're not going to take it, because that's not where they're coming from. But the specie that they deal in accounts of their depositors can be converted into that country's currency. So whatever gold or silver or bronze you maintain in your accounts, if you need to actually have an amount of that withdrawn so that you can use it, you go ahead and you convert what you have into whatever currency you need to use for whatever purpose, and then go ahead and use it. But it doesn't affect what is in your account as far as the specie goes. So my thought was just simply this. There's going to be resistance. We know that. We're all aware of that. Why not take the path that may seem to be of least resistance and give that a shot? Because who knows, maybe they may be the ones that say, you know what? Yeah, come on over here.
Are you in a position to have that conversation with them?
I'm sorry?
Are you in a position to have the conversation with them?
Yes, anyone can actually converse with them. I've been on the phone with them several times, not relating to this, but I have actually had conversations with those that actually work in that institution, and it's on native land, and it's run by natives. So it's not under the Federal Reserve Charter. This is their own thing. It's separate. It's separated from all the other intricacies and webs, as you would call it, of this system.
Interesting.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mark. Not just to pass the least resistance, how about this? We hit them from every angle, from every aspect, in every department that we can. That one, Dakota Bank including. Because I'll tell you what, we're at a point right now, and I know a lot of people are very, very anxious. I'm very, very anxious, extremely excited to get going. But the ramifications of this particular doing means the end of their world.
Correct.
Okay? This is the herald of the end of their world. Because once people start going into banks with their letters of credit or their declarations of value, right? The whole game is over, because what we're basically doing is we're telling the system, look, we know how it's worked. We can't be fooled anymore. This is the way we're going to move forward. And there's nothing that really they can rebut with, as was found with the filings. But this is happening in mass. So you're talking about the end of the entire structure, not just here on this planet, but universally. It's the end of their entire world. So you can understand why they're clinging so hard to the hope that people remain ignorant. You know?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
all those other banks, they're all either they will be repurposed or they'll disappear. Basically, because there's no market for them anymore.
And, I agree. Hold on for a second. Hey, Flo, did you want to say something? Did you want to chime in here?
Well, there's not much to say. You know, I'm ready to go. Everybody's ready to go. We got all these plans ready to go. Just a financial situation in our way, something silly that I'm really not comfortable with anymore. So, yeah, we can get that Lakota Bank going on, no problem. I'm ready to go. Kick these doors down. Glass ceiling break. Thank you.
Yeah. Mark, under Basel III, gold is money. And
yes.
if the Lakota Bank do deal in specie and you actually withdraw gold and accept gold, if you go to a car dealership, technically they actually have to accept it. Now they probably freak out because they probably won't have done it before. Mm-hmm. But from a lawful point of view, and inside the current system as it stands, gold is actually money.
And
Mark, can I just clarify with you which bank you're talking about? Because I've done a search and there's quite a few Dakota banks. There's just dakotabank.com.
No, it's Lakota. Lakota with an L.
Okay.
Lakota. LakotaBank.com.
LakotaBank.com. FreeLakotaBank.com?
FreeLakotaBank.com. That's the bank. And ever since they have launched, they have been dealing in nothing but specie. And because it's on Native American soil, they are not constrained to any of the Federal Reserve regulations or rules because, as we know, there was a treaty. Some of us know that there was a treaty between the natives and what you would call the federal, quote-unquote, government, but, parenthesis, that corporation, that you can do your thing your way without our interference, which is why on their land, none of the outside constabularies or any regulatory agencies can venture without permission from the council. So they have invited anyone and everyone who wants to have an account with them to come. They say, hey, no problem. You have pounds? We'll take pounds. You have dollars? We'll take dollars. You have pesos? We'll take pesos. And we'll convert that into specie in your account. And I'm not saying don't go after or don't, engage with the other banks. But Lakota's been doing this for a few years now. And I'm just making a point here that they may be pivotal in this thing. Because if they say yes, can you imagine the ripple effect this will have on every other institution that's constrained by those federal regulations?
Well, I have a feeling they're about to be inundated with queries. There you go. But thank you for sharing that, Mark. That's a good start.
Yeah, look, I've just had a comment from Sandy that she also supports the idea that the Indian nations will actually do this, that they're ready to do this. And in fact, North Dakota has come up twice in conversations with other people for me in the last 24 hours. So something's going on there. From a universal point of view, it keeps getting put in front of me. But I do agree with Bob. I think this is an all-in process. I think we hit them at every level all the time. But North Dakota, obviously, that can take some priority and get a lot of attention because it's just one bank. And if it's approached by many, many, many of us, then wanting to deposit our value with them, then, I say we do it, absolutely, and as soon as possible. So, in fact, what I'll say here is I think Scott and I should have a look at that, and anyone else who wants to jump in and make some approaches to the bank, some initial approaches. I think the more people they hear from, the more likely they are to take us seriously.
Gwen has a very, very good rapport with the Lakota people. She speaks Lakota.
Who does?
Gwen.
Caldwell?
Yep.
Uh-huh. Very nice. Cool. Well, thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. I'm just putting it out there. I'm like I said, I'm not saying that you shouldn't engage with other financial institutions, but, hey, who knows, this may be pivotal, and this may be something that can jumpstart whatever we're doing so that we can actually go ahead and do and attach it with our being. And who knows, they may be receptive to that. So I'm just
It's only going to take
out.
one to say yes. That's it. It's only going to take one.
Okay,
and I'm
well,
sure they'd actually love to be the first.
Well, that's what I had to add. You know,
that would be poetic justice in my regard. That the native tribes be the ones to actually precipitate this.
Mhm.
I think it'd be fantastic, actually.
I do
fantastic. You know, why? See, North Dakota was never. This is one of the bits of information that came out yesterday that just through a circumstance, when the Federal Reserve originally basically captured the whole American system, North Dakota had a very small population, and the governor of North Dakota arced up and wouldn't do it, and they decided there wasn't enough people in North Dakota to worry about at the time, and it's been that way ever since. So they've been sitting there like basically like a little sovereign entity, no longer little, I would say, and they've always operated independently of the Federal Reserve System. And okay, the universe has put this in front of us, guys. Let's really take this seriously. And thanks very much, Mark, for drawing it to our attention on the show. Obviously, you were meant to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Thank you.
once again, anybody who wants to get in contact with them, go online. It's freelakotabank.com. Okay?
Yeah, we've shared the link in the chat room too several times. So freelakotabank.com. Thank you very much, Mark and Flo.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So that's interesting. This is not the first time North Dakota or the Lakota has come into your awareness in the last little bit. Chris, have you gone? Or am I muted?
Sorry, I should be here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. No, I got distracted by a comment from Ginger Snap, who told us to stop pussyfooting around with references to the Galactics.
I heard you do a big sigh.
Going, well, you know, we had this discussion before the show, and we decided to take it a little easy. And you know, unless there's just one thing I'd like to put out there, that just to make it clear that there is something going on, is that there's information coming to me about what's been going on in the background. And one of the things that's been going on is DNA, our DNA, that's entire human beings and parts of body organs, exported for profit from this planet by encasing them in gold and teleporting them through stargates. Right? That's a piece of information that's come to me, and I've heard it from two sources, and you know, I'll verify it as far as I can. But that's probably the source of the commentary that is being received by Heather. In fact, that there is a trade in us at a galactic level. We're being exported as well as farmed locally.
Mm-hmm.
Not much joy in that. That's not a nice thing to be thinking about. But if that's the reality, we've got to put a stop to it.
And we
absolutely, and now. And it apparently is incredibly profitable, and I suspect what was being obtained in return was technology. The fact that gold was used just as a means of delivery tells you what its real value is. It's a useful metal, and it's pretty. The real value is what was inside the gold, which was our DNA and our energy in us. So there's a little.
The question came up of what galactics, which ones, and I don't know. I can't know names.
No, the only thing we can say, we know the Greys have been here actively for a long time, basically harvesting DNA and creating their own hybrid race to save themselves. The use of our DNA is, in fact, to do just that. It can be used to repair other kinds of bodies by creating hybrids which are more robust and have more capabilities. The skin suit that we're in is apparently the best thing in this galaxy to actually live a life in, to be blunt.
Now, you've got to kind of preface all of this by saying that none of this, I don't believe, has been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. We've got people's stories that people claim to have had these experiences themselves, and it's their first-hand accounts. Whether or not they can back it up with anything, I don't know. And we've got the study of ancient manuscripts and artifacts and stories that seem to tell a story about this. But what I'm trying to say is there's enough of them telling similar stories to think that there's something in it. And they have been for a long time.
There's a lady in the United States who published a coffee table book of artwork and stories, and the book in its entirety is made up of people who have been caught up in what has become called the Greys hybrid program. And again, this is all personal testimony, and these people were only the ones prepared to come forward. I have a friend who believes very strongly that I have two friends whose families were caught up in this. And how, to what level do we actually just fob off this information? Personal testimony does count for a lot, and if there are hundreds, if not thousands of people coming forward, or have come forward over the years and talked about this, there's got to be something going on behind it, so we can't dismiss it. Now, the thing we can really point to and look for information about is that apparently that particular species, there's a particular line of greys, because there's more than one population of this particular kind of species apparently, did a deal with Eisenhower back in the 50s. They basically came to him and said, we're going to have, we need human DNA. We're going to take it whether we like it or not. Will you do a deal with us? And apparently he did, and that this particular deal has been kind of in place, sort of, since that time, 50, 60 years, which is where this breeding program was really, had its roots in. But that was expanded to this more general form of export that apparently started up sometime around the 90s. And the information about that, about the reality of that, I'm hoping will come out when disclosure actually really starts to unfold, that we'll actually get whistleblowers from inside the military-industrial complex who'll come forward and again offer personal testimony about what really happened over that period of time.
One of the people in the chat room, Roy Martin, says he's got some good insight into all of this. So, Roy, if you want to call in, let us know what your area code is.
Yeah, I'd love to. There's two people I know personally, and their stories are quite agonising, and I'd love to have them talk about it on air, but that's not going to happen because it's too private. It's something that they will not do, and I would never put them in that position. If anyone's prepared to come forward or they've got first-hand information, yeah, please do, because this is really part of our reality. We can't deny this. There's too many independent stories from over a very long period, and they're all credible witnesses. These aren't people who you can just dismiss. It's happening to all walks of life. The degree to which families too, it's happened generationally. They've pursued families over multiple generations because of the DNA line. And a
lot of people are mentioning Laura Eisenhower in the chat room. I have interviewed her. If you want to go back and have a look at the interview that we did together. Yes, Laura's great, and she has a lot of information.
Indeed. See, that's Eisenhower's own family, passing bits and pieces through there. So again, we don't have, and anyhow, let me point out one thing. We all look for proof from an authority. Now, we've spent a long time on this show talking about the fact that we're living a giant deceptive fiction. Yet we still have a tendency to look for authority from, maybe a government or some government body. Well, they play their own agenda. We'll never get authority. We'll never get authoritative information from them. We're only going to get propaganda. So I don't look to them for confirmation of this. I look to personal testimony. That's why I like the really long interviews with people who've got really good information, because you can make up your own mind. You don't have some guy in a lab coat or a uniform or a badge, a shiny badge that says government official, say, oh, yes, there are no ETs out there. We're all quite alone. Move along, folks. Nothing to see here. No, I'm quite happy to actually trust my gut and listen to personal testimony. And there's been a few interviews with people I thought weren't genuine, that they were set up for some reason. And there's a number of those as well, but there are so many people whose stories are completely authentic to me, and we just can't dismiss it. So, Ginger, thanks for the prod. That little prod
and she's had enough.
Ginger snap. She's had enough, has she? We could go on.
Okay, let's take another caller. Area code 212.
Hey, guys.
Hey, who are we talking to?
Mike.
Hi, Mike.
How you doing?
Very well.
So I have a bank story.
Lovely.
Yeah, I have a bank story from today. Been waiting, whatever, like everyone else, for Heather's final documents, and but Heather's also been saying that this has been finalized since December 26th, right? So my banker has been on vacation for 2 weeks, and before he left for vacation, I said, John, I want to write you a bond. You all right with that? And he said, well, I don't see why not. Sure, that sounds fine. And then he left on vacation. I didn't hear from him for 2 weeks. So during those 2 weeks, I sent various emails to Dee, et cetera, trying to figure out what I was going to say back to John when he came back from vacation. Well, he came back from vacation today, and I hadn't heard back yet, and I know Heather's finalizing all these documents. So like Chris was saying, these things will be it's foolproof if Heather's nailing it all down, and I completely trust her that she is. And I've been waiting also to see those. So it wasn't like I was trying to – maybe I was pushing the envelope a little bit today when I went in. But, I felt like I had some, grounds to discuss further, at least the bond issue with him. So I went in, and I said to him, and he said, oh, yeah, I'm going to read from an email because I sent him a follow-up later on. Let's see. Right, so I said to him, he said, oh, right. I also have personal there, so I said, right. He said, you wanted to write me a bond. I said it was an insurance product. Yes, I agreed. He said, okay, so today he said banks don't write bonds unless it's like an investment bond, like GM. I said, oh, that's a great example. And he laughed, Obviously, banks writing bonds against GM debt is probably the worst bet you ever made. So, then I gave him so here's what I did. I gave him the UCC declaration numbers, universal and international record numbers, the 201-303-2035 under perpetuity, and the UCC 20,431-35. And I asked him, John, send those down to underwriting. I'm in New York, worked in banks. Ask them to determine whether indeed my value was underwritten since 12/26, because I intend to write you a bond against those infinite assets. Well, immediately I saw John getting a little bit nervous when I said that. And he said, well, as an insurance product, what I was trying to tell you, Mike, was that you can go to an insurance company. They'll be happy to write you a bond. They'll do a review of your assets, and then they'll send you over to me, which says Mike's worth $50,000 in assets. We're going to, charge him a transaction fee, and we're going to give you the bond, John, and you can deposit that as cash. So it all does work exactly as Heather and all of you guys have outlined, which was nice. But I wanted to put him a little bit on the spot and tell him to send that those filing numbers down to underwriting, because they would be the ones to ascertain whether we had, for instance, through closing the BIS and 195 other corporate governments and central banks, basically, private central banks, that we really had grabbed that value, that Heather had successfully foreclosed on all of them, and it was held under those UCC filings. So, so that's basically all I'm calling to say. Oh, Chris, you had a great show. I really enjoyed your first show yesterday. I wanted to say that. So I went and did that in a New York City bank today. He is going to send it to underwriting. We are going to have some sort of an answer.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So,
if you could keep us, thanks for the. I'm glad you enjoyed the show.
The plug of the show. Sure. I also did work at Goldman for a period of time, and my banker knows that I worked for a huge fixed income guy downtown. So when I went in there and gave him those numbers, he was clearly not, I could know a lot more about fixed income than I do, Chris, Bob, Lisa, everybody. You know what I'm saying? Because I work for somebody who's super famous in the fixed income arena. So he re-explained the bond to me through the insurance product, which is all fine. But he didn't deny for 1 second that that's exactly what would happen. They'd, ascertain my assets, give me a bond, and John was happy to deposit that bond as cash. So that process is as tight as can be. It's just...
So ascertaining the assets, you think the UCC filings are critical to make them comfortable?
Well, I wanted to put him in a position where he's like, our underwriting would determine whether we were going to issue more bonds against GE, whether we were going to deposit any more money in GE's account. He's like, right now, I don't think that would be a very sound, he was laughing about, what would constitute, what would make a bank let you write them a bond. In other words, Mike, since you're not General Motors or Procter & Gamble, it's not very likely that we're going to, unless you go to an insurance company, you're in New York, you go down to AIG and tell them, you want to, and they're going to review your assets before. And I said, well, that's why I brought you the UCC filing numbers. I want you to go on ahead and send those numbers down to underwriting, which is where this all gets vetted. And when that happens, we should have a positive step on the chessboard. That's all.
Yeah, well, that will confirm that the process exists in the bank and it's routine for them. I mean, what we're asking them to do is to accept the fact that we're alive and breathing as an asset. That's what we're in fact asking them to do ultimately.
Ultimately, but actually, Chris, right now, there is still that $5 billion secured in the public registry under the UCC, plus the $5 billion for damages secured.
Right. Yes. Not to stop you right there, but just real quick about the currencies. I wanted to get this in before I forget it about the Lakota Bank and everything. Is that this really, currencies are a transmission of value mechanism. So IUV and the in-change is really swapping out one for one a non-able to speculate it and gamble on it value system currency for all of these things. In other words, Lakota might, I think it's a great idea because it's a sovereign nation, and yes, they're sovereign people, and yes, they could do this. But again, I think about as soon as they get flooded with 600,000 people and wanting pounds and all those things exchanged, we're going to see people saying, well, I don't want pounds, I don't want dollars, I want IUV value.
That'd be great.
Well, the speculation is the part that has made this whole thing worthless, is my point.
It's the gambling. And
it's made everybody worthless.
Yeah, they've basically whipped off with our funds and turned the whole system into a giant gambling casino, naming themselves as the bankers, obviously. And we all know what happens. We all know what happens in Monopoly. The banker always wins.
When speculation hits infinity, Adnan Sakli said this on the radio. He's Bank of International Settlements guys. Like when speculation hit infinity, I was like, you guys are just printing to keep afloat. There's not even any. There's value has been gone for years now. You can draw that line at 2007 or whenever they started securitizing $100,000 mortgages into the market for $1 billion each.
Yeah.
My brother's $150,000 home had like $40 million in securities issued against it.
It's ridiculous. I mean, it brings new meaning
but that's why it's valueless, Chris.
I know, and it brings new meaning to the term. You're just making stuff up. And that's all. That's all they were doing.
Okay, guys, cheers. And Bob, I listen to transition shows. You and Julian are great, and thanks, Lisa, for the opportunity to be on the show.
Oh, thank you for calling in. That was amazing information, and please keep us updated.
Yes, please.
Go
Thanks
team.
for calling.
Go team. Yeah. Lovely.
Bye.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it's nice when people like that with that background have those connections and can have the conversation at that level. It's brilliant.
It
That's
feels
the
like
one people.
Chipping away at the edifice. We're just chipping away at it, piece by piece, because they can't deny it anymore. It's people are who are actually in the process of going out and doing things like Mike just did. They're going with a level of competence and a level of understanding of how things operate, where they're leaving the people that they're talking to speechless. They're human, and I've seen that reaction. When you see that reaction, everybody, when you go to the bank and you see the reaction, you're on the right track.
I saw it on my bank manager.
I keep harkening back to the Berlin Wall. If you remember the video recordings of what happened with the Berlin Wall, there were people kicking it and punching it and just pulling bits off of it by hand, and then someone went and got a hammer, then someone went and got a pickaxe, and then some guy turned up with a tractor and a nice big scoop on the front and started ripping bits out of it. Well, that Mike strikes me as being a bit of a tractor driver.
Yeah.
And that's what this process is going to generate as more and more people engage into it. We'll get a lot more people, and someone will turn up with a bulldozer, and then the wall's gone.
I have a feeling it'll be Heather with a bulldozer, but we'll wait and see.
yeah, I can see Heather in a hard hat. Mm-hmm.
I've always wanted to work one of those big, gigantic wrecking balls.
Oh, that'd be nice.
I'm with you there, Bob. I'm with you there. That'd be so much fun. I actually had an interesting experience as a kid. The people down the street asked me to pull down an old sort of house shack they had up in the hills. And my grandfather was there at the time, so he said, I'll help you. And he went to the local council and said, look, I'm going to go and dynamite a house up in the hills. Is that okay with you guys? Because he was from up the bush. His method of removing houses was dynamite. And they wouldn't let him do it. Now, damn that. So we actually hooked up his utility to it and pulled the whole thing over. Which is kind of what I'd like to do with the wall. I'd like to get my granddad's old ute out and just hook it up and just tow it away. That'd be fun.
That'd be fun. Well, the callers are adding so much to the conversation here, so let's keep going because they've been amazing. We've got area code 951.
Yes.
Yes. Who have we got?
There. Yeah, this is Lonnie Fraser there in Southern California. You're talking about North Dakota. As far as I know, all the banks don't belong to the Federal Reserve in North Dakota. They're one of the best banking systems in the world. If you ever read Ellen Brown, that wrote the book The Web of Debt, she uses North Dakota as her reference all the time.
So you're saying that the bank may not be the only one?
Yeah, what the state banks do in North Dakota is they don't belong to the Federal Reserve, so they have no debt. So all your school systems, they loan the farmers and the merchants and whatever money, and then the merchants and the farmers and the homeowners and whatever pay the bank. The bank uses that interest money to build highways and schools and courthouses and whatever. They don't belong to the Federal Reserve. They're one of the best states in the world.
Everybody in that area has some fun.
Yeah, they have 3% unemployment rate because they create so many jobs with reinvesting their own money back into the state.
While we've been online here, somebody went to the Lakota Bank and opened an account. Took 5 minutes. Did it online.
Yeah, well, Dakota or Lakota, doesn't matter which tribe it is. They the whole state is a state-run bank agency. It has nothing to do with the Federal Reserve. It has no debt.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for adding that information.
Yeah, just look up Ellen Brown on the web, and she'll explain the whole thing. Okay, thank you very much. I'll let you go.
Thank you, Lonnie. Thank you.
For calling.
I love these people calling in today. They're all awesome.
Yeah. Well, more than one bank in North Dakota would make sense. So, let's not stop with the Lakota Bank. Let's make the same offer to all of them.
If they're all out of the system, if they're all outside the Federal Reserve Charter, so to speak, then yeah, why not?
Excellent.
Okay, we've got another one. We've got area code 619.
Woo! Yes, hello. This is Brian Kelly calling from the road.
Oh, Brian Kelly. Hey, Brian.
I don't know if you
Kelly.
can hear me or not. Hello.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, cool. I'm on my way about to go through the Grapevine. Anybody that knows Southern California, it's like a mountainous range that separates Central California from the Valley of Los Angeles. So I might lose you. But
okay.
Just wanted to call in because I missed you guys, and I had a hard time connecting to Skype earlier. B, I wanted to say hi to everybody. C, I wanted to point people to that recent study that I just blogged the other day. It's that, I don't know if you guys saw it or not, just that study that was done in the U.S. and the U.K. talking about conspiracy theory. And then they did this whole study where they were studying the response on multiple threads across the internet, just a ridiculous amount of data they accrued on people's opinions of whether September 11th was an inside job or not. And it's such a valid line of thought based on Ginger's comment and based on Chris dancing around, walking on eggshells, talking about the galactics there at the beginning, which I got a good chuckle out of. But the thing is that, first of all, this study, what it ultimately, the conclusion that they came to was that there's more people that believe that the official story put out by the 9/11 Commission and by the media is not believable. There's more people now that believe that than there are people that believe that what the media reported about 19 guys with box cutters. There's more people that believe that that's not necessarily, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And they actually did a bunch of research on conspiracy theory, that phrase and where it came from. And it was, I think we probably talked about it before, but there's multiple reference points where they talk about it being created after the JFK assassination because there were so many people that believed there was that the official story put out about JFK being assassinated wasn't legit. And so they coined the phrase conspiracy theorists to label anybody that doesn't accept the official story, with official story just being the story that's put out essentially by the media and those that are feeding the stories to the media. And they refer to it as the most successful propaganda campaign in the history, in history, is the whole idea of conspiracy theory. And when you really dive deeper down into that, you realize that, if you base all of your opinions based on popular beliefs, because that's really where people get their beliefs and their opinions. A lot of the time it's not based on what they feel on the inside. It's just based on the story that the majority allegedly believe. We're now finding out that it's not the majority anymore. The media doesn't represent the majority opinion anymore. Then you realize that there's so many stories that are going around that people share with each other that I don't have the ability. Some of the stuff I talk about, you ask me to prove it, I don't necessarily have proof, but there's enough people out there that are talking about these things. I think that the biggest thing is really what we're all really being asked to do at this point is to put our beliefs, quote unquote, in a very, let's just say, malleable sack. that allows them to be reinterpreted based on new data. Because when we're so rigid in our beliefs, when we're so rigid in our opinions, we become hooked on it. We have attachments to them. And it doesn't allow us to, let's just say, reinterpret things that are very largely, the arrows are pointing in the direction that it's not the whole or complete story. And when you walk into every story or every situation or every conversation saying that my beliefs are fluid, you allow yourself the ability to constantly be reevaluating things, no matter what comes into the picture. And, so a lot of this stuff, somebody who's listening to the show for the first time and they start hearing us talk about DNA being sold on the Universal Stock Exchange, there's going to be a lot of, crosses. What did they just talk about? That sounds crazy. Because the popular belief that they've been trained by what everybody else allegedly believes based on what they see on the media is where they ultimately got their beliefs from. So, I think that we've kind of reached the time where we don't have to wait until the collective imagination show to talk about a lot of this. Because we do that a lot, right? When we're true talking, we're like, maybe this is better for the collective imagination show, and maybe we shouldn't talk about it today. I think that the most important thing we could possibly do is what we do right now, which is put out data, discuss it, bring to it our own opinion, and then let the people decide what they believe is true. So ultimately, the era that we're in right now, it's ending the embargo on truth. And people can decide for themselves what they believe as truth or what they don't believe as truth. A lot of these people that are out there preaching these very elaborate stories, they don't have facts to represent it either. So there's not always necessarily going to be factual evidence to support everything, but we are coming to a point where only truth will survive. So at this point, there's no other option other than to, when approached with situations or stories that are way outside of your level of understanding, approach it with an open mind and an open heart. And then find out if it resonates, but don't attach yourself to any one idea. The reason why I personally got so hooked on Project Camelot when I first started waking up to what was really going on in the world, I love that I could look at the person being interviewed in the eyes, and I could read their body language, and I could turn my BS detector on and say, this person seems like they're legitimate, or it feels like they're being really honest. And so we have to always be able to put it through our own truth test. But I'm happy that we're talking about all this stuff, because ultimately it gives people something to chew on and something to add to their bag of data that allows people to draw their own opinions and beliefs. So I just wanted to add that. If people haven't seen that article, I put it out yesterday. It's on Brian Kelly's blog.blogspot.com. It's genius, and all the data is there. And I got so many amazing comments about it, because they're like, oh, my God. So many people that are listening to this call, we've been labeled and judged as conspiracy theorists. And now we have data and evidence to support the idea that the conspiracy theorists, there's something more to it than these are a bunch of crazy people with a bunch of crazy ideas. They actually, in this study, they also determined that...
You know what I love, Brian? I love that you're on the road and that you've only got your phone and you've got bad reception and you still manage to call in and do a rant.
Yeah. No, Brian, I'm with you 1,000%. And what I hope, when the first disclosure announcement finally comes through, the way I'd personally like it to start is something like this. This is the most important announcement that you have ever heard. Please listen with an open mind and an open heart.
What I have to say to that whole thing, Brian, is, and sorry for all the religious people, but God bless the heretics, the apostates, and the conspiracy theorists. If not for them, we'd still be in the dark ages.
Yep. Exactly.
Hallelujah.
Exactly.
One last thing. On the. Can you guys still hear me? Because I'm really driving through the thicket at this point.
Yeah, we can
hear me right now? Okay. One last point on this article is awesome. they actually determined that those people in the study that were stuck on the official report of 9/11, they were the ones that were more radical and trying to defend it, and they got more hostile and more angry and lost their cool a lot faster than the alleged conspiracy theorists. And that's just an illustration of how amazingly successful the propaganda campaign was on behalf of those that created it, to have the people fight against each other based on the pop culture belief or the main story. I thought that was a really because that's been my experience as well. We all know the shrills, as we call them, or the trolls, without being judgmental. They come on these threads, and they're the most angry and hateful, and they're the ones that are allegedly supporting the official story. And I thought
yes,
that was
I think
important.
the words they used were that the conspiracy theorists were more logical, more rational, and looked at and were able to research enough to verify and substantiate their claims, but also were open-minded, whereas the other ones were not. It was like, this is the way it is, and this is the way it is, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah. They didn't even give. They were asked, well, what do you think was the reason? And they go, well, I don't really know what the reason was, but the whole reason that was given to us just doesn't make any sense. And so they weren't even giving necessarily an opinion on what the actual causes or who actually was behind it. They just didn't believe that the bullshit story that was jammed down our throats. So I think it's good.
No, I'm good, Brian. Really good. It's a great. We need to be reminded of this, because a lot of the time we kind of relegate ourselves to the corner. But if you actually engage with someone who's aggressive about defending the paradigm, and you stay in that neutral space and just say, well, this is how I feel. I listen to the information about, you and I listen to the same information. I just don't think it makes sense. Yet you are defending it, and you're getting angry at me.
Well,
why?
They become irrational. They become irrational because, number one,
their paradigm is being threatened.
Well, yeah, their paradigm is being shattered, and number two, most of these people, they esteem themselves as being well informed, on top of things, and nobody likes the feeling of being duped. You would be surprised at how much energy is invested in being right. People will invest, they will sacrifice, so much just so that they can be right. And when you're on the wrong side of that coin, sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow. But this is what I believe that Brian was talking about. If you have, because once your paradigm has been broken, you become very, very malleable. Okay, you become very, very, change becomes something that you do in your mind all the time, constantly. Because once you've been duped once and you find out that you have been, you start questioning everything. Mm-hmm. How do I know that's true? And you start.
When I fully embraced that phrase that I don't know what I don't know, it absolutely opened everything up for me, and I started to question everything.
Yep. I actually have a real quick story. I was my mom. My brother had a baby shower yesterday, and my mom had a friend that was coming over to help out. And she wanted to talk to me. This is all I knew ahead of time. She wanted to talk to me about her Jehovah's Witness background. And my mom mentioned something about Illuminati also. I go, oh, this is going to be an interesting conversation. So this woman, I was like, bring her over. And this woman came over, and she's probably in her maybe late 50s, early 60s, and she was really excited, really sweet woman, really excited. She had just found out she had just been 2 weeks prior, I had this conversation with her the day before yesterday. 2 weeks prior, she was cut. I don't know what word you give it in the in Jehovah's Witness. They cut her from the team. She was
disfellowshipped.
Disfellowshipped, yes. And everybody in her family. The story was so similar as far as some of the details about how she got the boot from the story that you shared with us in Morocco. But she started to realize, she woke up to a bunch of new data, basically, and was put into contact with some people that were had left the organization or what have you. And a couple of them were still inside of it they were like in an espionage mission to like find out what they were doing on the inside, even though they knew it was all a load of crap. I'm sorry if there's any Jehovah's Witnesses still on the phone, but I find that the odds are there's probably not. So I'll speak freely. And so when she was telling me all these things, like, oh my God, you got to talk to my friend Bob, and I told her your story, Bob. And then I began to educate her. She's like, well, how did you get involved with this? I'm like, oh God, there's the question. So I talked to her for 2 hours, and I told her, like, I gave her you can only really scratch the surface in a 2-hour conversation, but everything. And she was just jaw on the floor, just an open vessel for just totally taking in everything that I was saying. And it speaks to your point, Bob, about once you realize that your paradigm is crushed, because her whole family are all Jehovah's Witnesses. Her children, they're all not talking to her and this and that, but this is a woman that is shining in empowerment. She is like liberated, and all it took was her to find one little, well, I call it little, but one big paradigm shaking idea, and now she's this open receiver to bring a new understanding, because she realized that everything about her existence up to this point, so much of what she's been taught has all been a lie. And I was explaining to her when she was trying to tell me, the very familiar story we've all heard, which is, now that I know this, I'm trying to share it with everybody else, and most people are shutting me down. And I said, yep, that's how it goes. I said, because you got to remember, everybody has their triggering point. You hit yours, and now look how open you are. Now she's like, send me the paradigm report. Send me all the UCC filings. I want to listen to every single one of your guys' radio shows. And it's just like, oh my God. And months ago, she probably would have been like, oh my God, you're a conspiracy theorist, and you're crazy. And you think about how much that's happening everywhere now.
Well, it's very similar. What happens is what happens in that organization is very similar to what happens, in the rest of the world. Like, if you were to go to a witness and you were to ask them to research something, they're going to go to their library, which consists of several hundred books written by Jehovah's Witnesses, giving their interpretation of whatever subject matter it is that they're looking for. Much the same way that people who depend solely on the television as their source of information. Well, when you're locked into, a paradigm like that, they can tell you anything they want. And as long as it's on the television or in the Watchtower-bound volumes or whatever system it is that you may be in, you're accepted because it's in that system. And that's not open-minded. You may think that you're being open, but it's not open-minded. You got to go out. And actually, I even went further. I went out, I read the original documents, I read the original writings of the Bible in the original language. I went to the lands that they were written, to investigate. And when you start to do that investigation and you find out firsthand, most of the people who are in the chat rooms right now, most of the people who've come to become aware of OPPT have gone down the road to do and we encourage everyone. Don't take our word. Like Mike just called, and he called, and he went and he asked the bank, does it work this way? Ask questions, because we may be wrong. Don't, just because Lisa Harrison or Brian Kelly or anybody says something, or Heather, anybody, question it. find out for yourself, because there is nothing more gratifying and nothing more that can help you solidify in your mind the truth of a matter than for you to actually go ahead and do the investigation yourself and get your own experience and knowledge so that you know. And that is, and I don't give that just for, Jehovah, everybody. Because honestly, we've got to stop, and we've got to move out of being educated. And being educated is like being indoctrinated, okay? And start thinking.
And yes, for those who ask the question, Bob is a former Jehovah's Witness.
Yes.
Grew up in it.
I am a former Jehovah's Witness. I was also disfellowshipped. So if any of you are witnesses listening, you probably should turn the radio off while I'm talking, because you're not supposed to
hear your voice. Yes.
Not supposed to hear my voice, because I am a heretic and an apostate, and I'm proud.
You wicked, wicked man.
He's a very naughty boy.
He's a naughty boy, exactly. Yeah, look, we're in a folks. The deceptive slavery system we're in is locked into place with slavery of the mind. We were in. Thank you for the correction. Was in large part slavery of the mind, and it's incredible to see that lock just unclick and fall off people. And I'm looking forward to hearing millions of locks hit the ground at some point very soon.
You know what,
I'm
Chris, on
doing
top
it now. Okay, sure. No, sorry, go, Brian.
Oh, no worries. I have no idea when the call's going to get cut any minute, so if I lose everybody, I'm sorry. I'll talk to you later. But when I was explaining the story to Joanne about how unplugged from the system I am, her initial response to a common one, which is, how do you avoid from being arrested and doing fine, or going to jail or whatever? And I said, look, one of the things that was like a total aha moment for me, just sharing it this way, I said, look, I went into this knowing that the old fraudulent system and the old fraudulent rules could try to come after me for the decisions that I've made. But that doesn't make them any more right or me any more wrong. Because ultimately, I know I'm right, and I've chosen to walk this path. And if it has some consequence that I have to pay, first of all, I know my rights, and I can stand up for myself. But if they try to throw the book at me and they get me, then that's a road that's a path that I'm willing to accept. And I will deal with it when that time comes. But I'm not going to have any fear around it, because that takes away the whole point. I'm empowered. I know my truth. I'm standing in it. I'm basking in it. And I said, what it really boils down to is that everybody I'm talking to in a system like that, the whole system collapses. This system gains its power by consent. And we have the ability, in our own individual beingness and embodiment, to stand up and say at any moment, I do not consent. And at that point, you take your power back. Because by and large, the statutes, which aren't real laws, in this system that you can learn about by doing your own study, statutes they get their power by the consent of the person that's being charged with something. We have to consent to it. So when we all do this together, which is what we're now doing with the banking system, we're saying we don't consent to the old banking system, like Buckminster Fuller said, don't try to fix an old broken system, create a new one, and that's what we're doing. And I think that I realized at that moment, telling that story, there is no system that controls us. We submit to it. And when we all stop submitting to it en masse, the whole comes absolutely crumbling down.
Hey, Bob, I think your Padawan just graduated.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes, I think so.
Absolutely. He's ready to be unleashed on the world. Go, Brian.
That was my big point. That's what I had to say. But
Well, next time you do your rant, Brian, you're going to have to do it in Ewok. Then I know you have mastered.
I know I opted out of Spanish and opted into Ewok in high school for a reason.
Oh, well. Okay, we've only got 10 minutes to go, so should we try and take... We've got one more person on the line wanting to call in, so we've got area code 307. Area code 307? Hello? No? You did put your hand up. 307? Going, gone. Okay. We've covered a lot of different information today, gone down a lot of different rabbit holes. It's been fun, and I want to thank all of the callers because you've all added something amazing to the conversation. Thank you so much. Is there anything we need to cover off in the last few minutes? Any more updates or any more notifications?
Listen to the intro show on Wednesday.
Yeah, I'll get to that one.
All right.
I've got to listen.
I'm muting out because you guys are getting a little patchy, so I'm just going to mute out and listen.
Okay. Well, thanks for calling in because you've done 2 great rants today. Love it.
He has indeed. I'm good for announcements. I'm good for announcements, Lisa. There's nothing outstanding just at the moment. But what is outstanding is I think the degree of knowledge from the people that are participating directly in this show and their willingness to come, and put their ideas directly into it. I think that it's absolutely vital, and it's something that we need to continue to pursue is have the callers bring their voices to the fore.
Well, it's not called the One People Show for nothing.
No, it's not. It is absolutely a very important reason for that. And also thank you for Ginger Snap for removing the shackles from my personal hesitancy at putting too much information on people.
No, I'll put you on that. I'll put that on.
Yeah, no. Lisa wound me up a little bit before the show to not go too far. But we're finding the audiences are blending, as it should be, because this information we're sharing about consciousness, about the galactic races that we're attached to, whether we know it or not, it's all part of the information that really needs to come out to everybody.
We actually don't have an update on Project 13 at this point. I did put a call out. Sorry, I've got a really loud train going past. I'll mute.
Oh, what are you muting? I just wanted to say, for the people who called in and the ones in the chat room and all of you guys rock. These guys are amazing. I mean, 3 months ago, the conversation was so very, very different in the chat rooms. The calls were so very, very different. You guys have educated yourselves. You have come and stood up and actually embodied what was being written. You guys rock. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I'd like to remind everybody listening to this that this group of people, these here listening to this show now and to the podcast afterwards, you're the ones who are going to be having the same conversations that you've been hearing about today with people like the lady that Brian spoke to, where he was actually just taking that last bit into the information, with bank managers, with everybody around you, where we do hold this information, and our task will be not just to make this shift in the banking system, but to spread this information far and wide, because that's the reason you are here listening to all of this fantastic information, to empower you to embody, as Bob says, embody this new paradigm, and gently, lovingly, knowingly, willingly spread it far and wide. Go for it.
Go for it. Just to finish off what I was saying, I haven't had a chance to connect with Caleb yet. I did leave him a message to see if he had an update for us, but he hasn't gotten back to me as yet. And that includes on how he's doing health-wise. But I believe he's pretty much functioning at full speed. He was almost back to 100% by the time I left Morocco, so I'm sure he is by now. And Bob, what's just a quick update on your healing journey. How are you doing?
I am about 30 feet from the park.
Wow.
Oh, fantastic. As we speak?
Well, no, not as we speak, but...
Oh, okay. I thought you might have been, mobile, as in with your phone.
No.
Now, from what you've told me, you haven't been back in your wheelchair. I mean, you're kind of refusing to use it. You're just using a walker all the time now, yeah?
I use the walker all the time. I use the wheelchair when I have to carry things.
So just around the house?
Yeah.
Inside the house?
But, even inside the house I use the walker. Unless I have to bring like a plate or something in my lap or something that I can't grab it. Then I use the chair. But I would say 90% of the time I'm not in the chair.
So good.
And how was the muscles complaining and the tendons complaining? Is that settling down now? Are they getting stronger?
Well, I'm covering ground a lot faster.
Mm-hmm.
So they still hurt, though. I'd love to be able to say no, it doesn't, but it still does.
Well, I guess as long as they're continuing to build up, they're going to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, don't wish that away too much. And for the archive of all of the shows, you can go to 5dmedianetwork.com, the website. You'll find both an MP3 and MP4 version of all of the shows, usually within 24 hours of it being broadcast live, usually within a few hours, but certainly within 24. Excuse me. And we actually do have a pretty full schedule these days, which is amazing. So we've got the repurposing show, which started on Monday here in Australia, Sunday night in the US, with Scott and Chris. So it's 10 a.m. for Australia Eastern Time and 8 p.m. Eastern in the US.
Yep. Also, we need to include Hope Girl. She's going to be a permanent member of the team, and also Rena Iliades, who couldn't make yesterday's show, but she'll be stepping up next week.
Terrific. And then the following day, we've got the One People Show, as you all know, because you're here. Then Tuesday night, Wednesday morning for Australia, we've got the Collective Imagination. Then Wednesday night, Thursday morning in Australia, we've got Enjoy with Judy and Brian. Thursday night, Friday morning, we've got Cool Coincidence with Barbara. And Friday night, Saturday morning, we've got the Remembering with Matthew Darius, who's Bob's nephew, and Emilio popping in when he can. And that show is really a youth-based show. So we wanted to get and give all these amazing kids who are waking up in high school and college a voice, somewhere where they can go and talk about the issues that they're dealing with. Because waking up when you're in high school or in college is very different to waking up when you're 40 and been married for years and you've got kids and a mortgage and you've done all that. You're facing different issues. And so if you've got anybody in that sort of under 25 kind of age bracket who you think may benefit from talking to others, send them over to the Remembering. And then we've finally got the Transitioning on Saturday night for the US, Sunday morning in Australia, but that's at 7 a.m. Sunday morning time with Bob and Julian. So it's a full schedule these days on 5D Media Network, so it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Now, the archives for a lot of Julian Wells material on the IUV website is under the menu called Our Cosmic Community and then Friends in High Places. And if you've not looked into that much, dive in.
Thank you. Now, we're down to the last minute and a half. I want to, again, thank everybody for calling in because you guys are great. As soon as we've got anything from Heather, it will go immediately on to Removing the Shackles. And from there, Brian will pick it up, American Kabuki will pick it up, I will pick it up for LisaMHarrison.com and for the 5DMediaNetwork.com. Who else? It'll go on the IUV.com. So from there...
Within minutes of getting
Within
it.
minutes.
Within
minutes, yes. So from there, what you want to do is download copies of them and to ensure that you've got them if we end up having our websites hacked or something, and then re-uploading them to wherever you can. sharing them, spreading them around, publishing them on Facebook, whatever you can.
Replicate.
Get the word. Replicate, yes. Get the word out.
Absolutely.
And I do anticipate, but that's just me speculating, that this is going to go down this week. Judging, and honestly, it's probably based more on what I feel energetically than anything else. But I think this is the week.
Well, I think we've had a great show, Lisa. I've just had two folks Skyping me saying great show, so I'll pass that to everybody. Great show, everybody on the panel and out there. And see you next time. See you tomorrow, actually.
See you tomorrow for Enjoy.
Can I, no, not tomorrow for Enjoy, tomorrow for Collective Imagination.
Oh, Collective Imagination, sorry. I don't know what day it is.
So anybody that's friends with me on Facebook, my favorite new quote, the Albert Einstein quote, "The world is a dangerous place to live, not because of the people who are evil, but because of the people who don't do anything about it." From the bottom of my heart, thank you everyone for listening on the chat, for doing something about it. I love you guys so much.
Yep. Oh, one very last quick thing. Please check the Nova News on media and news on the IUV website. That's a message from Holly. Thanks, Holly.
Okay. Bye for now, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Cheers.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
everyone.